Hello everybody and welcome back to Punting Pioneer. I'm Corbin Hosler with Cool Stuff Inc. as always, and this is One Drop Black. This is pretty cool. Now, companions are on their way out, at least in terms of how we know them pretty soon. Probably by the time this video comes out, you'll have to pay 3 to put your companion from your sideboard to your hand. But for now, while I'm recording, I figure that's not the case. We should have one last run with Obosh. This is a pretty neat one. And this is a cool deck, right? One Drop Black. This is based off some of the mono black aggro Obosh lists floating around, and this is really cool. So as you can see, there are a lot of one drops here. We'll start with the creatures because there are a bunch of them. Now, the ones you would expect are here. Bloodsoaked Champion. It's a 2/1 that can actually bring itself back with Raid. A Dread Wanderer, another 2/1 that can also bring itself back under certain conditions. We've got Gutterbones, because I heard you like bringing your 2/1s back from the graveyard. We've also got Knight of the Ebon Legion, which is, in fact, a 1/2. Doesn't quite fit the theme, but this thing hits for a ton, and when your opponent loses life, it gets them. You know what this card does in Standard. It's very, very good. Now, rounding it out, this is a fun one. Banehound. Lifelink and haste. So obviously multiple relevant abilities on the card. Is only a 1/1, but it is what it is. You get haste out of the deal at least. So onto the spells here. You got what you might expect when everything's got to be cheap. Disfigure, Thoughtseize. Now we do get to the top end here. We've got the Murderous Riders is more removal. Also Rotting Regisaurs, because 7/6s are actually pretty good. So actually it looks like only... Yeah, let's do this. We'll go with the full playset here. Rounding it out, we have Shadowspear. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 trample and lifelink, and you can make your opponent's creatures lose stuff, all for the low cost of 1 to play and 2 to equip. This card is nuts. So everybody, we're going to attack our opponents, and we're going to attack them quickly with this deck. Now, what you don't see in this deck is that you don't see Scrap Heap Scrounger. That is sort of a staple of decks like this, but we don't have that. Instead, we have Obosh, the Preypiercer. Doubles all the damage from our odd converted mana cost sources, which, by the way, is everything in our deck. So this is pretty sweet. Rest of the sideboard, more removal here. Disfigures, Duress is where you need them. Infernal Reckoning, this is a cool one. You can hit an opponent's Inverter of Truth, because it is, in fact, colorless. It's devoid, so it counts. Which in this deck is all you want. Just remove the 6/6 so you can get in there, hopefully before they then win a turn or two later with Thassa's Oracle. Soul Guide Lantern for the Graveyard Hate. Hero's Downfall, the other Murderous Rider when you need it. And Aethersphere Harvester. This card's just good. It's actually evasive. It blocks really well. Obviously, you can get lifelink out of it multiple times. Really good in the aggro mirror. So there you go, everybody. We've got Mutavaults. We've got Castle Locthwains. We've got a bunch of different swamps. It is one drop mono black aggro, everybody. Thanks for watching. All right, here we go with mono black aggro, all 1-drops here in Pioneer. I'm not sure about this hand, though. I believe that we are on the draw. I'll give it a shot on the draw, I guess. We got 2 shots at a land, and obviously if we hit a land, this hand is kind of nutty. So I'm at least going to give it a shot here. We'll see what happens. See what our opponent is up to. They, of course, are on a Lurrus deck. We're not the only one still playing companions, it seems. Looks like they're on the Eidolon deck here. So a lot of auras likely that our opponent has. So there we go. We hit our land. That's a good start. So I think I like just being aggressive here early on, playing out my 1-drops. So I have 3 1-drops on turn 2, and then on turn 3, I can either play and equip the Shadowspear, I can Murderous Rider something, or I can Thoughtseize and Shadowspear, something along those lines. But I think we want to flood the board first here and frankly hope that it doesn't get too bad for us by that point. This deck, our opponent is playing, as you can see with the Alciad of Life's Bounty there, can give protection to creatures. It can get pretty silly. This thing has lifelink as well, just naturally. So, yeah, I mean, look, the beatdown begins here. We're the one playing mono black aggro, but our opponent is the one doing the beatdown. We're at 18, they're back up to 20. A Regisaur is nice and large, though. Let's see what we can do here, I guess. Has Vigilance, too. How annoying is that, right? That said, I mean, look, we certainly have a shot here, all right? We have the Murderous Rider to hopefully catch the Eidolon at some point, get in a big hit. The Regisaur will, again, hopefully be bigger than anything they have. And then if we can throw the Shadowspear onto the Rotting Regisaur, trample and lifelink, well, now all of a sudden we've got a way to get through the blockers they're putting up. So I guess it all kind of depends on what they do here. This one's problematic, frankly. All right, here comes the beatdown. I could block. for what it's worth. I won't, but I could. Hopefully we hit a land here, and I guess we just play the Regisaur. If not, we're just going to end up Thoughtseizing and Shadowspearing them, which is frankly fine. Oh, look, we did it. I could also attempt to bluff the attack with this. I may as well, I guess, because I don't know, it's pretty bad for me if I end up needing to pump it, if they just throw the SRAM or the Eidolon in front of it. So I think we'll just stick with plan A. We'll play a 7-6, and next turn we will have a 7-6 with Trample and Lifelink. So I don't know if that's going to be good enough, but it is something our opponent's going to have to respect for sure. We get to Sideboard, we'll have access to these Dismembers, stuff like that, but let's hope that the beatdown gets there. I mean, my opponent can no longer attack with their Hateful Eidolon either. You know, not for nothing, this Rotting Regisaur is a blocker. Obviously, we haven't got use out of our Thoughtseize this game, and we may or may not, frankly, but no, it looks like we won't, actually, as they go to play the last card out of their hand here. That or it's removal, and we'll do it in response. All right, so it's another Sentinel's Eyes. This one onto the Ephemia. It flies, so I guess the good news is there's a card in their hand, so we will at least get to Thoughtseize here. If we draw land, I guess if not, otherwise I'm just throwing the Shadowspear on the Regisaur and going to town. Let's see what happens. Frankly, I guess I should discard the Thoughtseize. We don't know that we're going to draw land. Obviously we did, but can't do much about that. So, because our opponent has up protection, I think I'm just going to go with the Shadowspear line and kind of hope that it gets there. I don't know that it will, but we will see. Apparently it was good enough. Wow, look at that. We took it down. I did not see that coming, honestly. I didn't know what my opponent's plan was, but I guess the Shadowspear got there. I mean, heck, it is a huge threat, especially attached to a 7-6, and there you can see why. So, what do I want here? I think I want all of this, or at least a lot of it. I kind of like all the removal possible, to be honest. We'll probably cut our worst 1-drops here for sure. And the thing is, we actually do have a ton of removal, no matter what. So, I mean, honestly, no matter what we do here, our deck's going to look okay. But let's go ahead and cut a couple of these 1-drops. I don't know that I need the Hero's Downfall. We already have so much removal now with these other members in there as well. The Soul Guide Lantern for the Lurrus is what I'm thinking about here. I'm going to give it a try. We'll throw one in, see what happens. I honestly, as is the case every week, I'm not sure of optimal sideboarding strategies here. That said, I didn't expect to get game one, and we did. So let's hope that our deck can do the same thing. It is nice, and that's kind of a good sign in a format like Pioneer, where things don't always go according to plan. To have a deck that, even when you don't draw sort of the pieces or combos or whatever that you want, your deck can still win. And there we had a draw that, frankly, didn't line up against our opponents very well at all, but we just happened to have cards that were really good against them, and we got there. So now we get a hand with a couple 1-drops, some Thoughtseizes, some Disfigures. This looks pretty good to me. This is why we call it 1-drop black. That is 2 lands and 5 1-drops in our hand. Exactly the way we drew it up, and now we get to take down this Hoplite. Now, it is true, absolutely true, that the biggest concern for us is probably Lurrus. Our opponent getting to play all of these creatures out of their graveyard after we take them out with removal. Well, that can be a real challenge, especially since we don't really have a clock. Being on the draw here, especially with favorite Hoplite, we're kind of forced to play defense. That said, it's a SRAM. And, well, I guess we have a couple options. A lot of 1-drops. Probably just going to play 1-1-drop and Disfigure it. Maybe I should have played the Bloodsoaked Champion there. I'm not sure. What I'm thinking is that next turn, basically, no matter what our opponent does, we get to play a 3rd land, and we get to at least bluff. We get to attack with our Knight of the Ebon Legion, and that probably works out fine. Obviously, what I would like to do is play both our 1-drops and then Thoughtseize our opponent, have control of the board. So it all depends on how bad this is for us. It's a 2nd SRAM. 2nd SRAM and pass? Well, I gotta say, I am not upset with that development at all. We're gonna start off by Thoughtseizing here. Now, I could have bluffed the attack, but I think it's probably more important to go for this Thoughtseize. Wow, these are some cards, though. I guess since we have the Murderous Rider, we can actually kill whatever they load up. We just want to take the Alseid so they can't protect it. You know, like I said, maybe I should have attacked first there. I might have missed the point of damage that way. But I didn't get a Thoughtseize in game 1. I wanted to Thoughtseize in this game, so we'll see. As it stands now, I mean, look, we would have had a Knight of the Ebon Legion, and maybe they're down a Saram, maybe they're not. But now we have an actual board, multiple creatures that can get big. We know what's in our opponent's hand. We have access to Murderous Rider once they load up this, well, perhaps this Ephemia, the Cacophony. Saram is very good, though. It's a very powerful card. Looks like they are going to hit it with the Cartouche. I think I like that. I mean, the bad news for us here is our opponent's actually spamming out quite a few creature tokens. This Ephemia gets to start exiling things. And, I mean, this is a problem. I mean, our deck is just kind of dorky against theirs, right? They spit out all these tiny little creatures, and we just have these 1-drops that trade with basically everything. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty much priced into just killing this. But I still don't attack. And the problem is I couldn't really attack in the first place. My opponent just has really good blocks. This is difficult for us. Honestly, I mean, I feel like maybe we actually, what we had in game 1, maybe actually the ideal draw here. I mean, this hand had 1-drops and removal, and our opponent still ended up with a board. It turns out they are playing a lot of the same cards we do. And that card just straight has protection from black, so that's a real problem. It turns out Rotting Regisaur and Shadowspear might actually be our route to victory here. The problem as this game goes on is that our opponent eventually gets to start playing Lurrus, and that can be problematic for us. At least once we have this Murderous Rider in play, we'll have lifelink, and then we'll get double damage once we play Obosh. But my opponent just getting to exile everything here and making a bunch of 2/2s is just going to be difficult to overcome in the long term. There's another Thoughtseize. Well, we're going to go down to 12 here. Hateful Eidolon. Don't hate hitting that one. See what I did there? The problem for us, like I said, though, is our opponent's making tokens with Ephemia. They're going to get to play Lurrus next turn. Ephemia is flying over us. They have a protection from black creature. I honestly don't know how we're supposed to beat the Apostle of Purifying Light. Vigilance and protection from black. That's a pretty good combination against us, and now it's a 6/5. Also has first strike. Yeah, this one's looking problematic for the home team. That kills us in 2 turns. There's just nothing we can do about it. And there never was. That card just pretty much impossible for us to beat. I think we're just dead. I can't even chump attack because to gain life because this stupid thing has vigilance. I think they got us. Fatal Push isn't going to get it done. All right, well, I don't know if we're going to get this match. Our opponent's cards just seem very good against us. Should I be flying over them? Is that the plan? You know, this actually blocks that Angel of Purifying Light. I gotta say, I don't hate the idea of it. Or not, whatever that thing is. The Apostle of Purifying Light. Yeah, I mean, honestly, this might just be a problematic matchup for us. I looked at that hand in that game, I thought, this looks great, and it just didn't even come close to getting there. Now, obviously, we double damage from Obosh. That'll make a difference. We'll do that at some point, hopefully, in this game. But it wasn't winning us that one against that Apostle of Purifying Light, just bashing us for 6 with protection from our entire deck. That might be a little bit of a bad matchup. But Aethersphere Harvester both gives us a way to fly over it. It gives us a way to block it. It gives us a way to gain some life. I think this is where we want to be. And 3-land Rotting Regisaur is also where I want to be. We get to go first, finally. I'm just going to start by Thoughtseizing. We have so many 1-drops we could I'm tired of them just having crazy good stuff on turn 1. And there you go. Oh, now this is what we want. My opponent has 3 creature buffs, 3 lands, and now after this Thoughtseize, because we used it on turn 1, they have no creatures. So we get to play a Mutavault and a Bloodsoaked Champion next turn. Then we get to play a Rotting Regisaur. And we get to start attacking. And my opponent, if they don't find a creature in their first 2 draw steps, they're probably just dead. Now, if they find a creature, well, we've got a game. Their hand is pretty stacked with creature buffs. But without the 1-drop, they're in much, much, much worse shape, and that is what I like to see. Seems they're thinking about exactly all the ways in which they do not have a creature in their hand right now. So, all right, fingers crossed we dodge a couple draw steps here, and we're looking pretty good to get there. Now, Concealed Courtyard was in their hand, and I mean, I didn't miss anything, did I? They just straight top decked that? Yep. All right, well, some days you're not so lucky, sometimes your opponents are. Certainly makes things a little more difficult. We do still have the Rotting Regisaur, and this doesn't have lifelink. It will unfortunately have Vigilance, but we're gonna have a 7/6. So, I mean, at least for a little bit, we can try to beat it. This is gonna get really big really quickly, though. Honestly, all it might take is putting the ethereal armor on it. That's gonna make it 6/7. It makes it a 6/7 or something. All right, well, here it comes. We're going to take 3. This is pretty unfortunate, all things considered. Oh, there's the second Harvester. Right. You know, I guess we could just beat down with the Harvesters, crew the Aethersphere Harvester with its crew cost of 1, use a Rotting Regisaur to crew it so we can attack. That's certainly a plan. This is gonna be a challenge, though. It really is. Our opponent has basically everything they need. Now that we didn't have an wow, these draws for them have been great. We didn't find an answer to the creature when they top decked it, and now they have protection from it, and it's gonna be big. So I'm not confident this is a race we're winning, even with our 3 mana 7/6, because our opponent has a 1 mana 7/8 First Striker Vigilance. Wow. Well, I guess this Aura's deck is pretty good, and I haven't even had a cast Loris, which is also kind of crazy if you think about it. Frankly, I'm not sure if we can win at this point. I don't really know what we would be looking for, especially given that we have to discard to our own Rotting Regisaur. And it's not even the biggest thing on the battlefield. We pay 3 mana for to have a 7/6. It's not the biggest thing in play. It's not really where you want to be. We'll play our Harvester, and that's what we can do. Pass the turn back. I suppose I can't even line up a block because of the first strike. This is just a disaster. And if our opponent has another enchantment, we're just dead. Yuck. I believe it was Ken Yukihiro who first debuted this deck at the Pioneer Players Tours several months ago, and it's a real thing. I mean, and that was before the deck had Luris, and now it has Luris. You get so much redundancy. Our opponent could play Luris in a favorite Hoplite right now, at least until June 4th anyways. So this is, we're just dead. I can make a chump block, but we have no way of winning this game, I guess. I suppose the best line for us would be if my opponent sacked to give it protection, and then we chump. Nah, we're just dead. I can make a chump block, but we're not beating the Alciad. We have died. That is really too bad. We had 2 really good hands in Game 2 and Game 3, but Magic's not just about your opening hand. It's about how your opening hand matches up with your opponents, and little bad luck happened there. Didn't go our way, and we lost it, but that's the way it goes. That was a pretty interesting matchup, honestly. When the mono black 1-drop deck isn't the beatdown deck, something has gone wrong for us, and that's what happened there. But Hope Springs Eternal, on to the next one. We'll see what we can do. All right, trying to pick up a win here. We will make Obosh our companion. We got 1 land and 3 drops. I think I have to ship this one. Let's go ahead and mulligan this one away and see if we do any better. Well, this has a second land. It's not the color we want, but it is, in fact, a second land. I guess the worst 1-drop. We have plenty of 1-drops in our hand to choose from. I guess the worst one is probably this. All right, well, if we, happen to find a swamp on top, this hand's going to look all right. So we at least have that going for us. All right, our opponent, no companion on their side, by the way, with the swamp and the pass. So I suppose that's what we want, and they have Fatal Push or whatever. I mean, most of our creatures are recursive, and that is something to build to. At least the Mutavault can pay for that. Well, let's go ahead and We'll at least attempt to get in there for 2. I probably should have attacked first. I'm pretty bad habit about trying to do things before combat. Trust me. I understand it's a bad habit. You should always do things second combat. Because, for instance, suppose our opponent has a Fatal Push here. If we attack with that Gutterbones, it's a long time before Gutterbones comes back to our hand. So if we attack first before showing them the Mutavault, they might just choose to Fatal Push it. But we show them Mutavault, and they're going to want to hold the Fatal Push for that. So just something to keep in mind. All right, so I think the line is to play the Bloodsoaked Champion here. I want to maximize the damage I get in on the turns where we can't, both cannot pump the Knight of Ebon Legion by dealing them 4, and also the turns that we can't pay 3 mana into it if we need to. So I'll play out the 2-1 here. That way, if we draw land next turn, we can play the Rotting Regisaur. And if we don't, we can play out our Knight of the Ebon Legion, get in for 4, and grow it. But as it turns out, our opponent did have the Fatal Push. They took 2 to make sure we didn't play anything scarier. I guess, I mean, that seems pretty reasonable to me. The Birth of Meletis. This card's cool. I love it. Standard All-Star, basically. You get a Plains put in your hand, you get a wall that blocks. It's pretty good. You even gain some life. So we'll see how it matches up against us. Can I found the land here? It's a black land even, the Dream. How about, friend, you deal with this Rotting Regisaur. I'll attack you for 2. We'll untap, probably, I mean, we'll see what our opponent does. I probably throw away the Murderous Rider just because we haven't seen a threat from our opponent yet. And that way I can play the Knight of the Ebon Legion. And if we hit land, I can even play the Knight of the Ebon Legion and have the mana up to pump it, should that matter. They have a blocker now, but can't block the 7/6. It could chump. I'm honestly unsure what our opponent's up to. They haven't done anything so far. Which makes it a little tempting to keep the Murderous Rider, I won't lie, but I think it's probably correct to throw it. We want to go pretty hard here on the aggro route, to be honest, and we get to turn on this Mutavault to try to punch in for 4 damage here. Now, if my opponent has a removal spell for the Rotting Regisaur, as it seems that they do, a Murderous Rider of their own, that's a little more problematic, I suppose, for a few reasons, because the 2/3 lifelinking body is certainly not irrelevant on Murderous Rider. We'll get in for 2 at least and play out our Knight. I guess I could also pay 2 to activate the Gutterbones. I don't think I want to do that quite yet. What? I'd like to, but I cannot. All right, so my opponent actually did lose. Oh, that worked out. They lost 4 life there because the Murderous Rider made him lose 2, and then they took 2 in combat. And just like that, we have a 2/3 Knight of the Ebon Legion. I like it. And we now have the mana to activate Castle Locthwain. We have the mana to activate the Mutavault. Our opponent just all walls all the time, I guess. Nyx Fleece Ram. Cool little enchantment creature from Journey into Nyx, I think. Right? Yeah, Journey into Nyx. Any of your upkeep, you gain a life. Well, okay. Guess that's pretty decent against us. Rotting Regisaur, huh? I don't hate it. Let's attack. Question is if my opponent blocks, is if I actually do this? I don't think I do. I think I play the Rotting Regisaur. They're playing this Nyx Fleece Ram that doesn't... That tells me they're probably not wrathing us. We have no cards in hand, so it's basically free, at least at this moment, to play the Rotting Regisaur. So let's give it a shot. It will necessitate another removal spell from our opponent. And now, look, we get to untap. If we hit a land, not only do we have 5 lands to play Obosh if we want, we have 5 lands, we could activate the Mutavault and activate the Knight of the Ebon Legion. And we've got some options here to attack. Our opponent's going to have to come up with some removal to get through things. And just the Murderous Rider, I don't think is getting the job done. If we hit land, I will probably just play Obosh. Nothing to discard. And there we go. So it's Obosh or Mutavault plus Knight, and given that the Mutavault just runs into the Murderous Rider, I think that means it's Obosh. Let's see what happens. Look, if this works, our opponent doesn't have removal for it. This is a big attack right now because it means any of our creatures trade with any of theirs. The only one they can actually remove is the Bloodsoaked Champion, which can come right back next turn anyways, or hopefully next turn. So we'll see what happens here. Yep, these blocks work for me. The Knight of the Ebon Legion, not going to kill the Nyx Fleece Ram. Okay. And they're just going to go for trades all around. I like it. They get to keep the Nyx Fleece Ram, and that's fine for them. Look, their life total is back up to 18, but we have control of the board, and if they don't find a way to get back ahead on board, we get to start cracking it with Obosh on top of all of this. We get to bring our creatures back. I mean, we're set up in a pretty good spot here. Assuming our opponent doesn't have actual removal, I gotta say, Castle Locthwain activation, main phase, with 4 cards in your hand, meaning you take 5. That is what I wanted to see, because this is a real problem for my opponent right now to try to figure out how they're going to climb back into this game. All right, there we go. Feels good when you have no cards in hand. Discard a Rotting Regisaur. I played a lot of this card in Standard when Black Green Adventure was a playable deck. Hey, look at that. You're gonna throw in the Banehound. You've got life gain, so do I. All right, turn on the Mutavault. Because we drew the Banehound, we don't have mana to activate the Knight, but I think that's okay. This is going to deal double damage here. That's how you do it. Mono black 1-drops. Play this 5-mana card you just always have access to and get your beatdown on. Is this lethal? 6, 8, 14? I think it's lethal. They're going to have something here. Fatal Push will do it. Well, there you go. I'm glad we didn't sink mana into it anyway. So, all right, now we're going to have... I don't think this is going to get doubled, so it'll be 6, 8, 10, I believe, that we're doing. That was important, though. We had to attack for lethal because otherwise my opponent actually could have chumped with the Nyx Fleece Ram and then Fatal Push the Rotting Regisaur because they would have had Revolt with their creature leaving the battlefield. But because we were able to attack for lethal, that didn't happen. And there we go, taking down game 1. So it's white-black walls, white-black life gain. Honestly, not entirely sure what we just witnessed, but I assume that the Duresses are needed. Disfigure, they did not show us any... I mean, Disfigure can team up with a block to kill a creature, but that's all. I mean, I'm not really sure that's where we need to be here. Could I cut Shadowspear? Maybe. Not really sure. I could cut the Bane. I should probably cut the Banehound, right? That was my own little spice because I wanted more 1-drops. But yeah, it's probably not correct here. I wonder if there's ever any value to something like Aethersphere Harvester, just as board wipe protection. You know, if your opponent's trying to play Shatter of the Skies and that sort of thing, I mean, just having an Aethersphere Harvester in play so that when you do draw for your turn, it essentially kind of gives your 1-drop haste because you can use that 1-drop, unless it's one of the couple we have that come into play tapped, to crew the Harvester and attack even the turn after a Wrath, which is not, you know, not really the norm in competitive Magic. Oh, excuse me. That said, I'm all about this hand. Double hand disruption, triple 1-drop, 2 lands, 5 1-drops. That's why we're playing this deck right here. So we're on the draw. Let's see what our opponent's up to, but hopefully I can just go something like Gutterbones into Gutterbones plus Knight into Thoughtseize plus Duress on turn 3. I mean, that's basically the dream here. And our opponent starting off with a tap land after mulliganing to 6 makes it seem like I might, you know, actually be safe to kind of get away with that line. Because if they, you know, if they were doing something like in our last match, right? If they were doing something that was scary, then I might need to burn the Thoughtseize or the Duress here on turn 2. But in this case, I think we may get to avoid that with the Birth of Meletis coming down. That means that I feel safe next turn to spam out my creatures so that I have 3 1-drops in play on turn 2. Then on turn 3, they're not going to have a sweeper when they untap. So I don't know what they're going to do, but it won't be a Shatter of the Skies. And then we get to untap and we get to Duress and Thoughtseize them away. So as long as they don't have a 3-mana play that just devastates us, and frankly, they probably don't. I don't think their deck is just full of those things. I can't really think of one in white-black that would get our whole board. Cry of the Carnarium, I suppose, would get us pretty hard, but I mean, I guess that seems unlikely. If they have Cry of the Carnarium, they're going to get us. Stands the reason, though, if they had a second black source, they might have they might have led with the swamp on turn 1, so that the castle would come into play untapped later. So either their third land is something like a concealed courtyard, or they don't have a swamp in their hand. Is kind of what I think we can deduce from that safely. We hit our third land, by the way. That worked out. Our opponent has just the tap land here, so they're going to Thoughtseize us, and they're not going to like what they see, quite frankly, because this is the big one for them. No matter what they take, a lot of times you Thoughtseize the Thoughtseize, but no matter what they Thoughtseize from us here, and honestly, that's what you get for using the new art. You got to go OG with this. Come on. But we're going to be able to Duress their Shatter the Sky or what have you away no matter what. And that's really the important thing in that exchange. And there's another 1-drop. But you're going to have no hand on turn 3. I like it. Wow. Look at that. Erebos' Intervention. That's a cool one. Removal, you gain life, you can exile graveyards. That's neat. Unfortunately for our opponent, it's not going to work out because they have a Murderous Rider that can't do anything yet. We get to play out our entire hand just on... We were even on the draw in this game, and we emptied our hand by turn 3. That's kind of crazy, actually. That's why you play mono black 1-drops. It's turn 3, and we've cast, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spells? Meanwhile, we get to get in for 4 damage here to trigger our Knight. It is top deck removal, top deck a sweeper or bust pretty much for our opponent. They're going to get a gain 2 life off of the Birth of Meletus here, but I just don't know if it's going to be enough. That Murderous Rider, even if you use it to shoot down our Knight of the Ebon Legion, you're still taking 6 a turn, and you're at 14. You've got some distance to go here, friend. And we have all these recursive creatures as well. And I guess we actually have to have dealt damage to our opponent. We have to have at least attacked our opponent for any of them to work. So I guess there's a world in which, that doesn't quite work. But we'll be okay. So let's swing here. Remember, land isn't even that bad for us because that's land number 4. That means our next one, land number 5, allows us to cast Obosh out of the companion zone, no matter what happens here. And I assume that this is a swift end on our Knight. Yep. All right, Knight of the Ebon Legion down, but frankly, not that big of a deal. We're going to get in for 6. They lost 2 life to this, so they're actually at 6, which means they're dead next turn to these creatures. If the best they can do is add a Murderous Rider, I think the game's over if we hit land. I'd get through 8 no matter what, I think, in that world. Yeah, and looks like that may be what's happening here. All right. So I think land wins. Anything else is simply good. I mean, as it stands, I guess we can attack anyways because we can just return to our hand whatever our opponent blocks. But we actually drew a Rotting Regisaur. So I could attack. My opponent would block 4, gain 2. So they'd be at 8, and then they would take 4 and go to 4. But let's just play this. I think I just pass the turn here. Honestly, because this attack is not lethal and allows me to remove one of our creatures. And if I want to add to the board, I can't return it to my hand. So this is fine. Let's just play our Rotting Regisaur, see what they do for their turn, and then we untap, and we're either going to get to play an Obosh, or we're going to have what is a lethal attack anyways. The Thraben Inspector. I suppose that does function as a pretty good chump block. But maybe we'll just find land here. Play our Obosh. I think I'm not missing anything this game, and there it is. We have very skillfully cast our companion that doubles the damage of all of our creatures. This thing's swinging for 14, by the way. But more importantly, it means that these 2 power creatures are swinging for 4, and that's really going to be the important one here. My opponent's going to crack the clue. This does trigger Revolt for what it's worth. If they have a Fatal Push, it looks like they do. But you can't get Obosh. All you can do is get the Rotting Regisaur. You can't get Obosh. It's a 5-drop. So if I attack with everything here, trade 1 with the Inspector, chump 1 with the Wall, trade 1 here, you take 4, you gain 2. You're not dead. You can deal with some of my board, but again, it's not good. These aren't good blocks for my opponent, and we have these recursive creatures. We can't bring them back this turn, but so long as we have something left to attack with next turn, we can start to bring everything back. Now, we put our opponent down to 4. That means if it takes more than one thing now. They have to have removal for Obosh, and they're still dead, being at 4 life. And if they don't have removal for Obosh, any one of our creatures is lethal. So I have to say, I wouldn't be surprised to see my opponent just activate the castle and kill themselves, because that seems to be where we're at. They need a sweeper here. And a sweeper here would be quite good, actually. Walking Ballista, X equals 2. All right. That's an interesting card. I can't say I expected to see that from them. It does keep them alive, though. We move to combat, they block our Obosh with it, and then they get to double ping our Gutterbones and our Bloodsoaked Champion. I mean, they're not dead here. I can't say that they're in a good position, but they're not dead. I get to bring back the Bloodsoaked Champion, I can bring back the Gutterbones. I mean, this is a problem for them. All of our creatures are recursive because we got to attack. And there's nothing they can do about that. So, you know, treading ground essentially with Walking Ballista. Not what's getting it done at all for our black-white opponent over here. 2 black-white decks in 2 rounds, by the way, but they are completely different decks. If I had to guess, this is... Well, maybe not. I was going to say, this might be something like a... Doom Foretold deck or something like that. Probably not, though, looking at more of this. Anyways, okay, so what do we want to do here? I think we want to return the Bloodsoaked Champion to the battlefield. I think return the Gutterbones to our hand. It's the one that requires them to have actually lost life. Oh, I can't do that. Never mind, they haven't lost life. So in that case, I guess we'll just return this Bloodsoaked Champion to play. And this is the same boat we were in last turn. I'm not going to play this other Bloodsoaked Champion because if they do find a sweeper to clear our board, I want that Bloodsoaked Champion left so that then we have a way to recur all of the others. If I play it out when we already have a dominating board state and then get Shattered the Sky and then draw land for 3 turns in a row while my opponent either draws gas or plays the cards out of their hand, we would be in a bad spot. But that's not how it went. We took it down. Mono black 1-drops. Turns out 7 spells by turn 3. It's a pretty okay strategy. All right, let's see if we can pick up another one here. All right, trying to round things off with a win here with our mono black 1-drops, and this looks like a pretty acceptable hand to me. We've got removal, we've got the 1-drops, we've got a Shadowspear here because this card seems pretty good. It seems pretty nice. But yeah, 2 1-drops, Fatal Push. We've got a little bit of everything covered here. Recursive creatures. Maybe would have prefer one of these swamps to be a Castle Locthwain, but honestly, it could be worse. So our opponent is on, what is this here? Ooh, oh, we got the Obosh Mirror. I'm in. Our opponent's on blue-red Obosh. All right. This sounds spicy. Okay, sure. Enjoy your companions now, because I'm pretty sure that after the rules change, where you have to pay 3 mana just to... These both do the same thing, don't they? Pretty much. I'm sorry, I completely lost my train of thought there. I got distracted by the game. I assume this Disfigure will be good. Our opponent's playing Obosh, so one would guess that they have creatures. Castle Embereth, huh? Okay. So it's going to be blue. What is happening? Blue-red aggro? That is, I mean, that is an odd costed card. Well, I didn't really want to draw those swamps anyways. Thanks. Interesting. This is a cool card for what it's worth. I mean, Scry 2 attached to a 1/2 body. That's kind of a deal. Before you even take into account the milling, which, you know, may or may not be relevant in Pioneer, but certainly could be. There's a Mutavault. I like that too. Not quite there on the Mutavault yet, but I guess the plan is just going to be to push, or I suppose disfigure this thing. Seems like the best line. We can disfigure it, play Gutterbones, and I guess start the beatdown. I needed to play double black sources that turn. Next turn I can play Mutavault. I can play Fatal Push if I need to. I can play and equip Shadowspear also if I want to. And this is how you know this card is silly. So, look, it's basically a 2020 Magic card where the rares are going to have 30 lines of text on them. But the cool thing about this card, Trample and Lifelink, it's basically like any number of equipment in the past. It gives some very great abilities, but it costs 1 mana. 1 mana! That's cheaper than Lightning Greaves. It's crazy, but you get the Trample and Lifelink. You get the equip cost for 2, so it's already a great turn 3 play. I'm not even talking about this fact where you can make your opponents who's hexproof and indestructible, because that's cool. It's the fact that it gets +1/+1 that I want to talk about, everybody. +1/+1 on a 1-cost equipment, and that can play in a deck like this. That is I mean, come on, right? I understand it's not setting the world on fire. It's nothing insane or anything like that. But come on, you know that's good. That's the 2020 power level of Shadowspear, not the 2018 power level where it just has Trample and Lifelink and all these other words on it. All right, that said, I think my plan is going to be to Thoughtseize my opponent here. I have no idea what they're doing. I'd like to know, so let's find out. We're going to get countered. Is it just removal? Is it charm? Petty theft, huh? Sure. Petty theft on our Dread Wanderer. I mean, this actually... Oh, it's a Fevered Visions. I got to preview this card for Brainstorm Brewery back in the day, as a matter of fact. Might have been the first preview card we ever got for my podcast. By the way, I always get it wrong. Free duels. tinyurl.com/BSB duels. My podcast is just giving away 10 duels. We want people to check us out and listen. We figured that was a good way to do it. So Brainstorm Brewery, if you're interested, everybody, go find our pinned post on Twitter, Brainstorm Brew, and you can enter to win some free duel lands. But anyways, back to this game. Opt, Storm Tamer, Fevered Visions. I'm pretty sure we take the Fevered Visions here. I have the Fatal Push to deal with the creature. I get to play out my hand. I get to continue to be perfectly mana efficient, because when your deck is full of 1 mana spells, turns out you can be pretty efficient with 1 mana. That said, I mean, 1 more land I guess is fine for us. We can play Obosh. We know our opponent doesn't have an answer to it right now. On the other hand, they have their own Obosh that they're getting closer to. Let's see what their hand was here. So we know about Obosh, Opt, and Siren Storm Tamer. And if they do none of that, that probably means they're just playing Brazen Bar, or they drew something else. Either way, it seems pretty good for us. And there's a Rotting Regisaur. All right. I don't really want to play the Regisaur, which is interesting here. I kind of just want to put the... kind of just want to put the Shadowspear on something, but I could fire up Mutavault, Shadowspear Mutavault. That way I get to keep the Fatal Push. Kind of like that. I think I like that the best. And see what happens here. I mean, surely my opponent has something, because they didn't even play a Siren Storm Tamer, which is a blocker. But apparently they're not going to do it. They're just going to take 9 here. Okay. Well, they're going to opt on the Incept. Is it some kind of combo deck? What am I missing? I mean, I trust that there's a plan. They clearly... I don't think you accidentally play Overwhelmed Apprentice and Pioneer. I think that they have a plan for what they're doing. I'm just not quite sure what that plan is. I'm very curious to find out. With the Sulphur Falls coming into play, they have 3 cards in hand. I believe we know about... Did I miss them playing Opt, maybe? I think maybe I just missed them playing Opt. So I think maybe we don't actually know about very many of their cards right now. But, I mean, I guess let's see what happens. I'm looking at lethal here. Now I don't have to pay to equip the Shadowspear? Let's attack. I guess it's not lethal, it's 7, but I think that this is better than plain I don't know. I'm just so confused by what my opponent's doing. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be playing around. But we have 2 Mutavaults. I mean, we have to be safe. I'll play out the Rotting Regisaur. Is it a counterspell? Okay, it's a Wizard's Retort. I don't care. Wizard's Retort, not a card I'm particularly concerned about. And the reason that worked out is because my opponent, if they played a creature, we would still have our upkeep, conveniently with 5 mana, to cast Fatal Push if that creature was a 1 or 2 drop, and then fire up both Mutavaults and attack for lethal. So, as it stands now, though, we still have the Fatal Push. We don't have to worry about discarding it. I suppose we don't have Revolt, but we have 4 lethal attackers. I'm not quite sure how my opponent's going to deal with this one, unless it's some sort of combo deck that I haven't quite figured out. Apparently, though, it is not. Onto the sideboard. Okay, well, Duress seems good. Duress seems very good. Soul Guide Lantern, maybe? They showed me some things I want to remove, but they didn't show me a ton. I'm going to cut the Disfigures, I guess. They just didn't show me much, and I think our deck is pretty well set up here, frankly. And now we get access to 4 Duresses that can deal with whatever they're trying to set up with over there with the Fevered Visions. So let's see what we can do. Mono black 1-drops, I'll tell you, this is a sweet deck. Now, it's interesting, you know, that first match, we had all 1-drops. We just got absolutely hosed. But in this next couple, it's worked out pretty well. And here we go with another pretty sweet hand. 3 lands, 3 1-drops, a Rotting Regisaur, 7/6. I'm in. We can... I mean, and the thing is, in the worst case scenario, we just trade with this. Not to mention that things like this can happen. My opponent can mill a Bloodsoaked Champion with the Overwhelmed Apprentice, allowing us to bring it back later. Now, just by virtue of mana, we're nowhere near doing that now, nor would we even need to do it anytime soon. But, hey, it's an option. I don't know if we could ever beat that black-white enchantment deck, though. We got kind of lucky the one game we got there with the Regisaur and the Shadowspear, but man, that deck was set up to counter us if I have ever seen one. They're exactly as fast as us. They have recursion with the Lurrus to make our removal bad, and on top of that, they have a bunch of lifelink and vigilance creatures. It's basically the perfect storm of things that mono black 1-drops is not likely to beat. Speaking of 1-drops, there's plenty of them in play right now. Let's go ahead and attack. Can't imagine a block. Yeah, we'll get an R2 here. Now, this costs 2 to bring back, and under slightly different circumstances, that might be appealing to me. But in this case, because we can still be mana efficient, we'll go ahead and play out both of these. Now, next turn, we can play Mutavault and Rotting Regisaur. Untap, discard Swamp, play out a second Rotting Regisaur after that. Our opponent here, if they're on a bunch of removal, that's not going to get the job done. Now, removal, counter spells, Fever Visions, keep the gas coming. Maybe they can get ahead in some way like that. But as it stands now, I'm honestly just not sure what their plan is. I mean, here they come, beating down for 2. Okay. I mean, I like where we're at right here. Now, they do have a wizard, so they can Wizards Retort us. But so be it, right? That we're winning the race. We have plenty of cards in our hand. In fact, we have more cards than they do. We have recursive creatures. I guess they're going to get to play their Obosh first, so that's the one thing we need to at least think about in the race. But look, our Rotting Regisaur Resolve, that's going to block the 1/2 if they don't have removal. A Wizard's Lightning isn't exactly going to remove it. You can Petty Theft it. That will work. So there you go. All right, so at least we don't have to discard. Now, next turn, I can probably untap, play land, play Regisaur, and Bloodsoaked Champion. We'll see what the card we draw is. But our opponent putting these Castle Locthwain into play tapped is... it's just not where they want to be. Now, doubling the damage from the Brazen Borrower with Obosh in play, that's 6 damage coming in, and it's 8 damage in the air that we can't do anything about. With that said, I think are still ahead in the race. I think. What if I played Mutavault? Or, I'm sorry, activating Mutavault. Attacked for 6. Puts them to 8. I then cast 2 spells. And they can't even attack once they have Obosh out. That's a pretty aggro line, but I think I'm going to give it a shot here. Because if they're just sitting on a counter spell, we actually fall... I don't know that we fall behind, per se, but it's not great for us in the race if we just play a Rotting Regisaur and it gets countered. Let's put them to the test. Let's see what we can do here. It's a Nimble Obstructionist flashed into block. Okay, I accept. I gotta say, I love Nimble Obstructionist as a card. Let your opponent mill themselves, cycle it to counter the Thassa's Oracle trigger. Pretty good against the best deck in the format, but in this case, they took damage, they paid 3 mana to trade with our land. I cannot imagine that's where they wanted to be, and now we're going to spam more creatures out onto the board. So, I guess the relevant thing for my opponent here in particular is winning the Obosh race. That's what they need to do, because we're going to win on board. I think they needed to try to engineer some kind of race scenario here. You know, if you're going to... I don't know, if you're going to make that trade, maybe keep the Apprentice back, flash in the Obstructionist, then hope to play Obosh and get in for 6 in the air, and then have blocks to not die. I mean, that seems like it's just hard to see the path to victory for my opponent here. The way they're playing the game thus far, they're going to need a lot more than what they have. I guess they can Castle Embereth their stuff. That's certainly a fairly powerful line, but we'll see here. I mean, we're coming in for 8. We're coming in for 8. They're at 10. They have 2 cards in hand. I can just activate abilities to bring these creatures back, especially if they were to block a Bloodsoaked Champion. I'm going to smartly block the Dread Wanderer here instead. It's the most expensive one to return to my hand. Also, it's one of the only ones that can block, for what it's worth. I guess the Gutterbones can block as well. It's so interesting, and I didn't really, notice how many of these cards existed. Oh, it is the Gutterbones. But I think it's just very interesting that we're in a spot now where you can put 12, 16 of these 2-power black 1-drops into your deck, and you just have all kinds of recursive creatures because there's 3 or 4 different riffs on this return your 2-powered 2/1, your 2-power 1-drop from the graveyard to play or your hand. It's pretty neat. So, all right, if we respect my opponent's counterspell, and it's still probably just correct to activate both of these. And this is, this is interesting also because I think, anyways, we have our opponent in a situation where they're going to have to do some really interesting stuff. They're going to need a board wipe. They're going to need something here to actually beat us. And if they did have that something, if they had a board wipe, well, we have these Rotting Regisaurs to fall back on. That said, Wizard's Lightning plus Brazen Borrower is pretty good. They're at 4. The Borrower, remember, can only block creatures with flying. They don't have the mana to cast Obosh. They have 1 card in their hand. So, I mean, we have 3 creatures. They have 1 blocker. They're going to need to come up with another answer here to not die on their next turn. So, I feel okay. The Wandering Fumarole, for what it's worth, can be activated. But apparently not. My opponent says, GG, that will do it, everybody. We took it down. Look at that, 2-1. Mono black aggro here. This is the Obosh version of the deck. I want to talk about that for a second. I said at the deck tech, there's no Scrap Heap Scroungers. That is a really key part of these decks. But what's interesting, and I wouldn't play this deck without Scrounger when Obosh goes, but what's interesting is how much power this deck has without either of those things. We only played Obosh, I think, twice, maybe even once. We didn't need Obosh to win a lot of these games. And the games we lost, Obosh wasn't even really going to make a difference. So, Mono Black's a great deck, and it was one of the early premier decks of Pioneer, especially when it had access to Smuggler's Copter. That was pretty neat. I think I, for a different channel, probably even recorded videos with it back then. But as this format struggles, I'll say this, I think Pioneer is struggling to find its footing. It started off and people envisioned it as just being this excessively fair format where people were playing old standard decks and you could play whatever you wanted and it was going to be like the golden days of Modern, and that was really neat. As it turns out, though, unlike Modern, you don't have 1 or 2 cards from each set that make an impact, and I mean Modern back in those golden days would be 1 or 2 new cards from the newest set. These days, it's more like the meta is defined by the new set. Companions are obviously the perfect example, but it's been like a year since there's been a set without something banned somewhere. And even the cards that are legal, look at something like Uro, are metagame defining almost. Same with Thassa's Oracle and Underworld Breach and all of that. So, Mono Black is sort of an interesting throwback, so to speak. And I mean, it's got its new cards too. It says 3 mana 7/6 if from in 20, but it's kind of the classic Pioneer deck. And if everyone is trying to do a new broken thing, sometimes you just play 2 1s for 1s and play a couple hand disruption spells and get there. So if that's up your alley, this deck is neat. So this was the Obosh version. Look, I understand it's going to be outdated, but the reason I wanted to play it like this is, one, it's to have some fun with companions before they go, but also to see kind of what happened without leaning on Scrounger, and I think the deck did pretty well for itself. So everybody, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe out there. There's a lot going on in the world, from coronavirus to protests and everything else. So however you choose to spend your time and your energy in the world. I just hope that you stay safe when you're not watching my videos, everybody. Fight for what you believe in. I'll see you next week.